So you're doing some 10 pulls on the current banner, and where you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Bennett, who might as well be a 5-star. So yesterday we talked about the basics of Bennett. We went over his skill, his burst, how it worked, things like that. In this video, this is going to be his artifact grinding hell video. We're going to go much deeper into the stats that you want, the things that you want to focus on for Benny, and even some teams. So as this is going on behind me, just going to recap real quick. Benny is a phenomenal healer and buffer for your team. He is going to heal inside of his burst, and he is going to give an attack buff inside of his burst. So it is going to be really, really good. So he is going to be really, really good on a lot of teams. He's going to be able to slot in, heal, and buff, doing a phenomenal job of that. As you can see, I was running Dia. As you can see, I was running Farina, Dia, Kazuha, and Bennett. This is one of my favorite teams to run. I run this team in the Abyss a lot. And even in this team, Dia does a great, great job. Now, something else with this team, you could essentially take Dia out and put anybody else in, almost anybody else. Benny and Farina go together very, very well, with Farina decreasing your team's HP, Bennett healing your on-field character, giving Farina fanfare points with her burst. These two go together very, very well in a way that, like I said, you can slot kind of anybody into that Dia slot. I prefer Dia. I really like having Dia on the field. So now we're going to look at his stats, his weapon, his artifacts. Being the Artifact Grinding Hell guide, we should talk about his artifacts, right? So the buff that his burst gives is based on his base attack, which is Bennett's base attack plus the base attack of the weapon that you have equipped. If we open up his stats, it is going to be this white number, the 865. The green number is going to come from artifacts. It does not include that. It only includes the white number. Now we're also going to look at the other stats that Bennett has right here. His crit split 33 over 186.6, energy recharge 220, which is a very, very important stat. It's roughly 27,000 max HP, which is another important stat because his healing is based on his max HP, his buffing on his base attack. Crit rate, crit damage are going to improve. His personal damage, ER is going to make sure that you have his buff up a ton. Now, because it's his base attack plus the weapon's base attack, we're going to look at weapons. I am running a level 90 Mistsplitter, which is one of, if not his best weapon for buffing because of this insane base attack of 674. Along with, I believe, Aquila, they might be the two highest base attack swords in the game. Crit damage is going to be nice because it's going to improve his personal damage. Now, some other weapon options if you don't have Mistsplitter. Like I said, Aquila, it is a standard banner. So if you've been doing some pulls on the standard banner, if you've been doing some pulls on the weapon banner and you've been losing, you might have an Aquila that's going to also have a really, really high base attack for Benny. I am also leveling up Skyward Blade to get some energy recharge. This is going to have a little lower base attack at level 90, but the energy recharge is going to be really, really good. For some 4-star or free-to-play options, you do have Sapwood, which is going to be one of the higher base attack craftable swords in the game. It's also going to have energy recharge, which is going to be very good for him. You could also use Favonius. Favonius is going to have a lower base attack, so if you want energy recharge, Sapwood is going to be better for a 4-star. Then, of course, you have Alley Flash. The Alley Flash is going to be the highest base attack 4-star sword in the game. It does get into the 600s, even as a 4-star. So if you have this and you have enough energy recharge on him, this is going to be phenomenal as a 4-star weapon for getting that attack buff as high as you can with the 4-star weapon. So for artifact set, Noblesse. Noblesse is super, super good on Benny. 2-piece gets up your elemental burst damage, which is where your damage from Benny is going to come anyway. 4-piece, using your burst, increases all party members' attack by 20% for 12 seconds. So you're going to do an even bigger attack buff from using Benny's burst, which is really, really good. This fits with him super, super well. Now we're going to look at the individual artifacts. My flower has crit rate, attack, HP percent, defense. The stats that you really want are going to be like crit rate, crit damage, ER, HP percent, or attack percent. HP percent if you want him to heal more, attack percent if you want him to damage more. So this is not that great. The crit rate and the HP are the crit rate and the HP are great, but that attack and defense, if that had been like crit damage or ER, that would have made it even better. Now this plume, I don't think I'm ever going to change this plume out. Energy recharge, crit rate, HP percent, flat HP. This is going to be really, really good because I want him to heal, because I have him paired with Farina, I have built a very good hybrid build where he's doing damage, he has ER, and he's healing. This plume is something that is great for me. ER, crit rate, HP percent, this is great to run him with Farina. Energy recharge sands. You can run HP, you can run attack, but energy recharge is typically going to be his best. Flat attack, crit damage, HP, that one's not that great. I do have this HP sands with crit rate, crit damage, but I want the energy recharge, right? The energy recharge is going to be much more valuable on Benny than the HP build. If I'm running a pure healer, maybe, but ER is better. Then for Goblet, you can either run HP percent or like a pyro damage. I'm running HP percent because I'm running him with Farina. I want him to be healing a fair amount as well. So crit damage, EM, attack percent, HP. Again, this is kind of a weaker one. I wish that crit damage probably would have been crit rate, and then I wish I would have gotten some ER, right? 220 is fine on Benny. I'd much rather have him closer to like 250 on the energy recharge. So this could definitely improve. For the circlet, I'm running a crit damage, attack percent, and crit rate. This is definitely like my weakest artifact. I could be running an HP if I want him to heal more, but he's healing enough for me to run a crit damage or a crit rate circlet. But this is definitely my weakest piece. I need to get him something with like crit damage, higher crit rate, and then like HP percent instead of attack percent. That would be much better. And then some extra energy recharge, like I said. Now I am running 5P Snowblast, which doesn't do anything. So actually I went back to my sands and looked. I had an ER sands that actually improves my Benny quite a bit. So I did throw this ER sands onto him with crit rate, flat HP, crit damage, and EM. I wish it had been attack percent on the EM, but that's okay. Or HP percent, but the crit rate, crit damage split is much better. If I equip this to him and then I go check his stats now, his split is 40 over 199 with still 230 ER. So this is still a really good one. His HP didn't change, his base attack didn't change. So I'm still getting the same buff, the same healing, and more damage out of my Benny. So now we're gonna talk about more teams. And we're gonna start talking about C6 Benny and some teams on when to do them and when not to do C6 Benny. So the next team that we're going to look at though is my Raiden Chevy Hyper Carry team. I absolutely love this team. This is by far my best team in the game. Real quick, we're going to show Benny's buff kind of at work. My Raiden's current attack is 1,942. If we then go in and we drop Benny's burst, it is going to go up to... It is now showing 2100. I actually think that that is only from the Noblesse passive, because I'm going to run through the rest of my team, then let Raiden get on the field, getting all of the buffs, and it goes up to 4400, right? And Chevy and Sara are not going to get her up to 4400, but all three of them buffing Raiden does get her up to 4400. Which allows her to do a ton of damage. As you can see, I think in the Abyss, I'm hitting like 330k, and then outside of the Abyss with like Skara, I'm hitting like 519 with my C0 Raiden. So this is gonna be really good. This is gonna be a team where C6 Benny does not hurt it. It doesn't necessarily help it, but it doesn't hurt it. And that's because Raiden's burst gives Electro Infusion that cannot be overridden by something like C6 Benny's burst. Certain characters have that phrasing in there, and certain characters do not have that phrasing in there, which is very important when determining if you want to C6 your Benny or not. Typically, this team is not ran with Chevy, it is ran with Kazuha, and in that instance, Benny still works in that team just as he did with Chevy. If having Chevy in here is just going to give an attack buff to Raiden because of like Pyro Resonance, so I prefer to run Chevy. Also, my Chevy is better built than my Kazuha. As we were talking about, C6, Sword, Claymore, and Polearm characters inside of his burst gain a 15% power damage bonus, and their weapons are infused with Pyro. Sometimes this helps a team, sometimes this hurts a team, sometimes this does nothing to the team. This Raiden Hyper Carry team is one of those instances where it does nothing to the team. If we look at Raiden's talent description of her burst, it says that whenever she uses her burst, she gets Electro Infusion that cannot be overridden. That last part of the phrase, cannot be overridden, is very important, because there are characters that will get infusion where it can be overridden by Benny's burst, and that is not helpful. That actually can hurt the team. So now we're going to talk about some teams where the C6 Benny can actually hurt the team, not help it. And for that, we are going to look at good old Eula. Now, Eula is a physical damage focused character. And while her burst nuke still works with Benny, her attacks leading up to the nuke do not work as well. We want Eula to be doing physical damage, not pyro damage. It also makes it harder to get superconduct reactions, which help because they drop your enemy's resistance to physical. So having the infusion can hurt a Eula team because of not getting physical damage. Again, it doesn't necessarily hurt her nuke burst. It does hurt her attacks between the nuke and the non-nuke, right? So as you can see, Eula is swinging the sword doing pyro infusion, but then whenever her nuke drops, it still does 524k in this. So she can still make really good use of that attack buff, but having that pyro infusion, again, makes it harder to get superconduct, makes it to where her overall damage is lower because you have to do normal attacks leading up to that point. So it can affect it that way. Now, there are ways to kind of get around it. You don't even have to run Bennett with Eula any longer. Before, it was kind of iffy on running it. She does appreciate the attack, but now with the introduction of Farina, you don't really need to run Benny anymore anyway. You can still run something like Eula, C6, Mika, Kuki, 4-piece tenacity Kuki for superconduct, and then Farina, Mika, and Kuki are giving some healing to stack fanfare points on Farina. You can run that. You can also get freezes that way for cryo resonance. That's another thing that C6 Benny kind of makes difficult for Eula is cryo resonance, because with Eula you want to build as much crit damage as you can and kind of get your crit rate into something that where like C6 Rosaria or cryo resonance will help compensate for the lower crit rate. C6 Benny does not allow for that to happen. You're never going to have cryo on your enemy. It's always going to be melted off. Now, to show a character whose infusion can be overridden, we're going to use Kaching in the Raiden Hypercarry team. Now, Kaching, whenever she uses her skill, does get Electro Infusion. However, if you read her skill, if you read her talent, it does not say it cannot be overridden. So if we drop Bennett's burst and then use her skill to get the Electro Infusion, Benny's burst overrides the Electro Infusion. And now Kaching is doing pyro damage instead of electro damage, which is not really good for Kaching. So having C6 Benny in this instance would not be very good. However, this has not been a normal team. Typically, you don't run Kaching in this, you run Aggravate Kaching. But even in an Aggravate Kaching kind of instance, Benny can hurt that as well, because then you start causing burning instead of getting aggravate teams. You don't typically want to run Benny or any pyro character with Dendro unless you're wanting Burgeon or Burning, but Kaching doesn't want that. So Benny can't really go into these kind of teams. Even though Kaching would love the attack buff, you still can't really do it just because of the reactions involved. You can do Benny with Dendro, however, I really recommend that you don't. It just makes it so much easier to not use Benny and Dendro together. Now we're going to talk about a team with like Child, and in this instance, this is a good instance, and we're going to talk about snapshotting. So Xiangling is going to be our character that is going to be snapshotting Benny's burst. If you don't know what snapshotting is, it is like we're going to drop Benny's burst, then Xiangling is going to use her burst. Now, Xiangling's burst lasts longer than Benny's burst, but because we used it inside of Benny's burst, it will have the attack buff for the full duration of the Pyronado, even though the burst on the field is going to be gone. Benny's circle on the field is going to expire. The Tornado, the Pyronado from Xiangling will still have that attack buff for the full duration. That is snapshotting. So in this team, we have Child, Xiangling, Kazuha, and Benny. We just want to make sure that we're using Benny's burst first before going to Xiangling, dropping Guoba because of the constellations. Guoba drops their resistance to Pyro. Then using Pyronado, she is going to have the attack buff for the full duration. Go to Child, use this skill to apply Hydro, so that way we're causing vaporized reactions with Xiangling. So certain bursts can snapshot, certain bursts cannot snapshot. Just if you're curious about one, go look it up. There's a table on the wiki that tells you exactly what bursts are snapshottable. Benny's burst works great with snapshotting for those that can do it, like Xiangling. Now, I could stand here for hours going through every single team that Bennett is good in. But that's the thing. I don't want to make a several hour long video on Benny. So with that being said, that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or someone else will be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.